Very good morning and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us once again for Streaming School. It is lovely to have you here. It's a beautiful, bright day. I hope it's nice and sunny wherever you are. And just as a quick introduction to what Streaming School is, essentially we put together a series of GCSE lessons every single day, 3 or 4 or 5 back to back, depending on which day it is. And we're inviting everyone to come join and watch those items to keep their learning fresh and keep their understanding fresh. My name's Leon Hady, and I'm really, really proud to gather this fine collection almost of Avengers assembling teachers to take you through a load of items. Former head teacher, so we have some idea of what we're doing, and everyone we use is a qualified teacher who's normally in schools, and this little assistant has worked her way in, and I'm sure most parents and most people watching are used to people bombing in on their different video calls. But without further ado, I get to say a very good morning to my colleague Nish, who's always there to help us out. Good morning, Nish.
Morning, morning.
And we get to say a very warm good morning to our good friend, Mr. Action Jackson, who is joining us from sunny London.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How you doing?
Well.
That's amazing stuff. It is a beautiful morning, isn't it?
It is. I'm feeling a little bit. I actually look like nicely lit on the screen. Normally when it's dark, I just look like Darth Vader coming through. But yeah, that's what happens when you got a face for radio action. If you'd like to share your screen, buddy, I'll be more than happy to hand over the reins.
Excellent stuff. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to be here with you once again. Loving being able to present to each and every one of us. There we go. We're going to share our screen and make this happen. Okay. Sorted?
All good from our end.
Oh, good. Excellent. Well, guys, welcome and good morning. My name is Action Jackson, UK Ambassador for Happiness. I'm so excited to be here with you. Before I actually go into my screen share, I think it's so important for us to understand the importance of motivation. I've been doing this now for the last 20 years, and my passion is to inspire the next generation to feel good about themselves. And I've been doing this for a very long time now. And I think life is about being positive. So I always start my day with music. I don't know how you start your day, but I start my day with music. And the way I start my day is by changing my thoughts. Yes. How do I change my thoughts? I put on a good piece of music and I start to vibe. See, when you dance and you move and you groove, it makes you just feel good. Now, anyone that knows me knows that this is what I go by. Your thoughts always affect your emotions. Your emotions affect your actions, and your actions affect your results. So this is the phrase I want you to work with today. I am amazing. I can't get tired of that. Just like water, I am amazing. You are amazing as well. I am amazing. I can see you. I need you to do the move. I am amazing. Excellent stuff. Now, pretty much, this is what I use to get myself in the zone. People ask me, why are you so happy? I use the I am statement. The I am statement is the password to happiness. The I am statement is the password to happiness. Now, today I'm going to be talking about creating I am statements. Now, I want you to understand that your brain is like a command center, okay? Whatever you say to the command center, it will give you the energy to do that thing. So if you say, I am amazing, the brain goes, what does that mean? And what do I need to do with that statement? Oftentimes when you say to someone, you're amazing, they reject it. That's because their brain and their heart's been hijacked by the negative monsters. So we need to evict the negative monsters from our minds and from our hearts by creating new positive rangers up in there, man. So here's what we do. What matters most is how you see yourself. I'm Action Jackson, actor, TV presenter, motivational speaker. My mom thinks I'm good looking. I believe her. Come on now. Hello. Hey, that's how I see myself. How do you see yourself? I need you to begin to realize that your happiness is connected to what you say and what you think. I don't care if you feel it. You've got to say it to become it. It's almost you got to fake it to become it. Fake it to make it. Yes. Because too often we're told we're not good enough. We're not going to make it. Negative things latch onto our brain, but we need to push it away. So there are a couple of I am statements that I'm going to share with you today that I want you to either borrow or create your own, okay? So like I said, I'm Action Jackson. I am creative. I am energetic. I am positive. I love food. Now, here is one. I am amazing. You say that to yourself long enough, you start to feel it. But the first thing that happens is you reject it. That's normal. Keep saying it until it sits with you. Another statement is, I am creative. See, you don't have to be it to say it. You say it to be it. Ooh, I repeat. You don't have to be it to say it. You say it to be it. That's how it works. So if you're going to create a statement, it's going to be bigger than you. Yes, and that's okay. You grow into the statement. You may not be creative right now in your mind's eye, but the more you start saying the statement, the more you start to become that statement. Number 3, I am brave. Ooh, I love this one. You might not feel like you're brave right now, but the more you say it, the more brave you feel, the more brave you become. Remember, you don't have to be it to say it. You have to say it to be it. Next up, I am determined. I love this one. Oftentimes on the road to success, you're saying to yourself, I don't think I can do this. I'm not good enough. This I am statement gets you driven. The next one, I am intelligent. I am intelligent. Remember, you don't have to be it to say it. You have to say it to become it. If you've ever watched Harry Potter, you know Harry Potter is all about spells. So they open up big, massive spell book and they read the spell, and maybe that spell was going to turn someone into a frog. By the time they read the spell, wave the magic wand, point it to the person, that person becomes a frog. I want you to see this as your book of spells, the spell that turns you from negative to positive. You've got to use these words. You've got to spell the words out to transform you. The final one, I am beautiful. Listen, this is to the guys and to girls as well. We are all beautiful people. The more you say these words to yourself, the more you become these words. You can borrow any of this, say it to yourself, and here's your assignment. I want you to actually choose one, right? You're going to choose one of these words, and you're going to then record it on your phone. This I am statement, you say it, and you record it about 21 times and play it back to yourself, because the mind needs you to be ready to take action. So as you go into today, I just want you to feel it. I am amazing. What? What? I am amazing. What? I see Mr. God in the corner there, feeling the vibe. Okay. Hey, I am amazing. So over to you, Mr. God. What would be your I am statement?
I am persistent, particularly when my daughter decides that she doesn't necessarily want to undertake some of the wonderful activities her school and myself have designed for her.
I love that. I love that. Leon, what's your I am statement?
I'm grateful, bro. Always grateful.
I'm grateful.
Always
wow.
Grateful. Just be buried in gratitude, everything else works out. You remember that? Everything else is easy.
That is so true. That is so true. Excellent stuff. Young lady, what's your I am statement?
This isn't one of those times where people want to wait for later.
I
don't know. There we go. Layla likes to build to effect.
I'm coming back to find out your I am statement. That's your homework.
Pick up some of the parenting with daughters, bro. You're gonna need this in a few. Have a great day, Action Man. God bless you. Good morning, Michael. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, all good. All good.
Thanks for filling in
as you
for
were
us.
saying, getting ready for another day. Kids downstairs. We've gone for a run already, Lala and I, so we're kind of refreshed. We're good.
Wonderful, wonderful. What a lovely play. What a lovely way to start the day, buddy. Well, I'm gonna obviously Gable's wandered into shot as well, so I'm sure that carnage is just about to start from my end. So I'm just gonna hand over as quickly as I can.
All right, thank you. And yeah, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all again on a lovely Wednesday, actually. And it's also nice to be teaching rather than presenting, because whilst I enjoyed it, you know, I appreciate how hard Nish and Leon obviously worked to make sure this whole thing runs for you and for us as well. So we're going to do today's Literature Day. Hooray! So as always, what we're going to do is ensure that you have an understanding of what you're going to have to come up against if we're talking about exams, but actually also developing some of the skills that you're going to need, not just for English, but for any of those exams. So what we're going to focus on now, actually, today, is we're going to continue exploring the notion of poetry, which forms a major part of our literature studies, A-level, GCSE, IGCSE, and we're going to begin to think about how we plan a poetry comparison response. So Nish, do you mind sharing my screen now, please?
Yep.
All right. Cool.
Thank you. So we can see that, yes, our day today is ensuring that we can plan a poetry comparison response. I missed, obviously, May the 4th, so I thought I'd put a little Star Wars reference in there for everyone to say as well. Our main aims are going to be as follows. So we are going to make sure that we know the method to plan a comparison response, because we've talked before, haven't we, about content, method, timing. And the poetry comparison response is essentially, it typifies that notion. The content, do you know the poems? Method, do you know how to use those poems, that subject knowledge, to create a full mark response? And timing, can you do it in exam time? If we get all three right, we end up with full marks. And then finally, we're going to do a little bit, implicitly, not explicitly here, a revision in regards to our anthology poems as well. That's our aim today. Now, let's move straight into the methods, because I don't want to waste anyone's time, because there's going to be a lot of demonstration today, but it's important that we have an underpinning of the knowledge of the method itself. Now, as always, please feel free to pause this, to take screenshots, to do what you will with it. But remember, the method is how you answer the question. So there's no need to guess how to do it. We should just know how to do it. That's the whole point here. And once more, what we're teaching you here at Streaming School is one way that you can tackle this question. There are obviously ways in which you may already know. There are obviously ways of tackling the question that your teachers may already have highlighted to you. Please use whatever method you feel most comfortable with. Our plan here is just to ensure you have a method to work with. So the plan should take us no more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a push, or maybe longer if you have additional time, which some of us do. You will only be able to know if you can do that by planning, by practicing planning. As always, we read the question carefully, making sure to underline the key parts of it. Now, that's important because it helps us to understand the question and the key wording of the question as well, which we'll look at in a moment. Then what we do is, for most of our examples, you are given a named poem. They give you one poem they want you to work with. We're going to use an AQA example today, but typically most examples give you one poem and ask you to compare with another. If they don't, well, let's pretend when we say the named poem, it's one poem that instantly comes.
And there's Mike gone again.
Yeah.
Then what we need to do is note down 3 to 5 or maybe more of the answers to the question. That's what we need to make sure we do. What are our answers to the question? So you may now wish to explore how form language. Again, remember, what's important to consider here is that you may pick a poem which is very similar, and that's okay, and that's absolutely fine to use, but sometimes it can be quite hard to work with a poem when they're both exactly the same. What you then want to probably think about then is some of the subtleties. So again, remember here, the poem you select could deal with it in a similar way. It could be very different, or there could be subtle similarities and differences that we then want to work with. And again, those subtleties are obviously what creates a higher order thinking, which creates higher levels, but we'll get to that. Once you've selected the poem that you wish to compare it with, well, then next to each point you've noted, you need to write whether you believe the poem that you've selected is similar or different in the way that it tackles that issue, and then briefly explain why. And when you've done that, you've essentially made your point of comparison. Once we finish that part, we then need to select the best kind of 3 points. And again, remember, we talked about this before. When we say our best 3 points, what we mean are the points that allow us to fully analyze. That's what we want to explore. So let's have a look at this. And finally, we need to remember context. And again, consider that in our exam, the context isn't just the history of the poem or the poet or the time it's set. It could also be the context of the poem itself. So a mother arguing with a child, or the poem being retrospective. The context is all about what is occurring at the time and what is the history behind it. So we are always trying to make sure that in our paragraphs we do this. And again, we talked about it plenty of times before. Our main paragraphs, PEE, PEA, whatever you call it. But again, you can see the bullet points here help us to achieve full marks. And as we said before in our previous lessons, and please refer back to them, if we only do the first three, point, evidence, and explain, and we stop there, we're probably on a grade 4 if we're talking GCSE levels. But by doing the further analysis, we go up. So you could do these three completely perfectly, and that's great. You're 100% correct at that stage. But being 100% correct and stopping at that stage will only give you a grade 4 at best. You then need to add these different elements, maybe not in every single paragraph, but by the end of the essay, you should have all of them in there. And all we're going to do, the poetry comparison, is this. And then when we write, we link. This is similar or different to poem X. And then we do the evidence and the explanation again. That's all we do. So here is a question example we're going to look at before we have a go at doing this ourselves. So reread Catherine. Choose one of a poem from the conflict anthology. Compare how tension is presented in these two poems. So there's the key word again, tension. So if we know the poem Catherine, great. If we don't worry. What we're looking at here is the method we're using to plan it. So again, tension. Well, what do I understand by the poem tension in poem Catherine? Well, here you can see I've considered that conflict with authority figures is how it deals with tension. It also presents tension as a negative thing. Notice that point isn't particularly highbrow, high level, but it allows me to then create analysis. And finally, in the poem Catherine, when it comes to tension, well, women presented as a figure of tension. So here the mother is presented as a figure of tension. So I've got my 3 points done, my answers. I might have more, but for this example, I've selected 3. Then I think, well, what poem would work well with this? So I've then chosen the poem Cousin Kate. And you can see here, with our planning methods, next stage is, okay, so conflict with authority figure, is that the same in the poem Cousin Kate? Well, it is similar because the speaker has tension with the great lord, but the tension is in context is between a mother and a child in comparison. So you can see here, I've said, yes, it's similar, but actually the figure is different. So there's my subtlety. Then tension is presented as a negative thing. Is that similar? Yeah, it's similar. But it's different because both heart attention was in the situation explored, but Cousin Kate, notice it's all in note form because I'm trying to do this at speed in the exam, as a positive outcome which derives from the tension to the child. And then finally, women presented as a figure of tension. Well, again, this is similar, but Catherine, it's a negative relationship between the women, difficulty of a single parent family, whilst Cousin Kate highlights the negative perceptions of Victorian society towards unmarried women. So you can see, that literally takes, okay, this point, similar or different. This point, similar or different. And why? This point, similar or different. Why? Now I've got my points of comparison. All I need now is my analysis. Back to the poems. And here, this is where you're going to need to know the content part of our content method timing. Do you know these poems inside out? Because you should have a plan without even thinking about it. You should just know this. Remember, it's not just the quotes you need to revise. It's the analysis that goes with those quotes to help you. And we can see here, I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but please feel free to screenshot this or whatever you need to do. There's my points. There's my analysis that goes with this. And then again, for my second poem, here's my points. There's my similarities and differences. And there is my analysis. And again, all I now need to do with this is basically turn these notes into full sentences. And I have a full mark essay, because when I proofread, have I looked at language? Yes. Have I looked at structure? Yes. Have I looked at context? Yes, because I'm talking about the Victorian society as opposed to mother-child relationship. You get the idea now. So you can see this is exactly how we plan to achieve full marks. Let's now look at a piece that we can explore together. Compare the ways poets present the impact of war in exposure and one other poem from the anthology. So again, what is our key word here? Our key word or phrase is the impact of war. We have to use exposure and one other poem. So let's now try and go through this process as best we can in the 10 minutes roughly. We're going to give ourselves 8 that we have to do this task. So here we are. Here is our question. this is what you would see. Question at the top. Then we have the poem exposure. So what's nice here is if it's a poem you think, oh, I haven't seen this before, or I knew I should have revised this one. Well, actually, we've got the poem here, so you're just going to have to treat it like an unseen poem, which I won't celebrate you for, because obviously you know what's coming up. If someone said to me, I'm going to tell you part of what's going to be in that exam, well, then I'd make sure I'd learned that. That's what you should do to ensure you have the content. So again, the impact of war. So I've already started to write down some of my points to this poem here. So I've suggested that the impact of war causes psychological harm, that we have in this poem, nature or God is the enemy, and also that the impact of war is it creates a sense of physical harm as well. Now what I need to do is think about the poem that I want to compare it to. So this is where the answer to this is simply choose something which you are comfortable using, but you have to be able to ensure you have the analysis you need to support it, because you can't just say it's similar, it's different. You need the analysis. So I'm going to use Remains by Simon Armitage. I'm looking at the AQA anthology here. You are more than welcome to use what you wish. So does the impact of war create psychological harm in the poem Remains? So R for Remains, yes, completely. Yes, it completely does. And again, we can start, if we wanted to, talk about the quotations that we want to use. You can hear me not cheating by turning the page at all. So we've got obviously the quotes, the drink and the drugs. And I'm just going to leave it like that, because obviously I'm just doing it in note form. It doesn't necessarily matter if I've got spelling mistakes in my notes, although obviously as an English teacher, I can't sit down and look at it. But then that enables me to go, right, when I come back to this, I now have what I need to help support me with that. I can then obviously talk about psychological harm. I can also include repetition of phrases to show damage. You get the idea straight away. Now, we've got the idea here of God being the enemy. So is that, or God or nature being the enemy, is that similar or different in the poem Remains? Well, actually, it's, I would argue, potentially here, that it is different. I think that it's different, because my personal opinion here is that it's not nature or God is the enemy. It's actually that the speaker sees themselves as the enemy in some senses. The experience itself is the enemy. That's what's causing the impact on them. And then finally, we have here that war causes physical harm. Well, of course, in Remains, it's similar, because we have phrases such as rips through, we have his blood shadow as well. Fantastic. So you can see here, that's the stage one completed. I've already got my points there that I needed to use. I've also started to include some of the quotations. Then I need to start to think about my analysis for exposure. Now you might do this as a chart. That'll probably be much neater for you, but it's whatever works best. So it causes psychological harm. So straight away, obviously, we got in exposure, brains ache, our brains ache. Brains ache. And that obviously highlights the psychological pain. We've also got the collective pronoun, which highlights again that this is a problem for all soldiers. Why is this significant? Well, it's significant because we know that Owen, the writer, fought in World War I and suffered shell shock or PTSD. So why does that matter? It shows that he has first-hand experience of the impact. You can hear we're starting to develop our answer, aren't we, already? So then, moreover, we need to start looking again at Remains, and we've started doing this here. The drink and the drugs won't flush them out. There's a sense of the drink and the drugs. There's a sense of escapism, trying to release the pain. Also, you have this idea of flush, but obviously now we have the verb flush, suggests that he's trying to cleanse And that creates a sense of, there's a Christian reference there, isn't there? So a sense of baptism. So there's a religious reference, and there's our context, which could suggest he sees himself very much as a sinner who's not able to flush or cleanse his body of this impurity, ironically using impurity to show obviously the depth of psychological harm now caused to him. And that could be, that's a great use of the analysis that we had here as well. We go further with exposure, and we can also talk about nothing happens. And the fact that that is repeated, so now we've got structure, it's repeated, highlights a sense of the repetition that he now experiences. That repeated nature shows there's no escape, no salvation in that sense. No salvation. Great, so that's point number 1 done. We move through now to point number 2, and we have said the nature of God is the enemy. And again, let's consider what we've got here for exposure. We've said that's very much the case. And of course, then we go, right, I need to look back at this poem. So I can remember the quote, I can't quite remember the quote. What am I looking for here? You know, is love of God seen dying? Is the quote that we're looking for? Is it that we are dying? So let's go with that one. So we go, love of God seems dying. And again, remember that in the exam, because for many of us it's a closed book, we can be partly accurate, not fully accurate as well. So love of God seems dying. It says a sense here that obviously that's abandoned. We've also got for the notion here that, again, with merciless ice east winds, and again, because it's all note form, I'm just going to sit there. So we have this idea of the prophetic fallacy, so the personification, rather, and prophetic fallacy of the weather, which seems to be attacking the soldiers. And again, also the verb knives, the verb that knives us, highlights once again pain, misery, linking back to point number 1. I could use that to think, well, actually, do I use this here in point 2, or do I go up into psychological harm? Because actually, the wind isn't knifing them, but that's how he perceives it psychologically. And again, when we talk about that our difference with remains is the speaker sees themselves as the enemy, well, of course, then we need to go back to our work here. And what I'd use is the repetition of the personal pronoun. So, for example, we have phrases such as, I see broad daylight, in relation to him shooting. So again, we have this sense of being culpable, the one being essentially the author of his harm in relation to war. But again, is that true? Or is that the commanding officers are the ones that have done that to him? So, Nish, do you mind moving back to my face, please?
Cool.
So you can see we had about 6 or so minutes there, and we are 2/3 of the way through planning a full mark essay. What we haven't done is complete the 3rd point, and we haven't proofread our points and our analysis as well. But you can see how all I'm doing is following a method which I've practiced time and time again, but because I know the poems, that's what makes that process quick and easy. If you do not know your texts, if you do not know your poems, if you do not know the information you need for science or the formulas in maths, you're going to struggle. So it's always about your content, your method, and your timing. And again, I hope that's been of use. I'm looking forward to working with Nish. Leon's all right, but I prefer working with Nish, obviously, tomorrow. And guys, thank you. It's always a pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks a million, Mike. Really, really appreciate it, buddy. Look forward to catching you in a bit.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy your day, guys.
You too, buddy. All right, Nish, thank you very much. All for you now.
All right, cool. So the optional task for English literature today is create your own poetry comparison plan based on 2 poems you've studied. So if you've missed out on any sessions, any of Mike's sessions, you can find them on YouTube and on Facebook. And up next, I believe we have maths. Is that correct?
Fantastic. See you shortly.
See you in a bit.
What do you mean by shortly?